Well, hello everybody. Hello everybody. As promised, this is Reality Is with Renee. You can check out the YouTube channel, Reality Is at YouTube, and you will see other videos that will coincide with the conversation we're having today. I'm making this video because I am a registered voter in the city of Chicago, and what I have learned disturbs me greatly. Now, I always exercise and I always push because people have died for these rights to make sure that your voice is your vote. But when you find out that a system that is supposed to be transparent and honest is not as transparent and honest as it claimed to be, then for me, I have a problem. I have a real problem. And when I have a problem about something, I'm not going to sit silent. And I'm just not just going to let it go away. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to address it and I'm going to create the awareness. Now you would say you're just one person and you're probably right. And that's okay too. But somebody had to start somewhere. Malcolm X started somewhere. Martin Luther King started somewhere. Rosa Parks even started somewhere when she did not give her seat up on the back of the bus. And if we're ever going to make a difference in our society, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our states, in our cities, it's going to have to start with us. And we need to understand as registered voters the power that we hold. And if you don't realize the power that you hold, then you need to understand how important your vote is because at election time, people who's running for office put their resume to let you know what they stand for in whatever seat they're running for to try to get you, the registered voter, to vote for them and place them in that seat. But what you also need to understand that every elected official is your employee when you, the registered voter, are the employer. And we need to let our voices be known when we're unhappy about some things and how things are going in our state, city, government, mayor, president, alderman, state representative, whichever seat they hold, judge, Cook County Board president, whoever seat it is, your voice matters. So never let anybody tell you that your voice do not matter because it does. So I'm having this conversation today with a mayoral candidate who was removed off the ballot, Frederick Collins, and it was sabotage. We're going to call it what it is. Iana Van Zant always said, call a thing a thing. So we're calling a thing a thing. He was railroaded. So there is an index. We're going to talk about this index first, and then we're going to get into the conversation. I placed this on social media. So for those who chime into social media, you can chime into my Twitter account. You can chime into YouTube via my Twitter account, and you will see that this index is up. And it's an index sheet for Frederick Collins proof of petitions. It says the case number is 23-EB-MUN-005. Table of contents, index for the mayor candidate Frederick Collins. Proof, objector did not go to the board of election, no FOIA filed, no sign in. Number 3, subpoena order for Andre Holland, court reporter hearing note from 12/12/22. 4, proof that hearing officer and objector attorney requested signatures only, court reporters hearing notes from 12/12/2022. Proof that hearing officer ordered a record exam without candidate's attorney being present. Now, I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying because it's very important. 6, false statements made on Frederick Collins in motion filed by objector's attorney. 7, recap sheets, breakdown of sheets not filed properly, including blank sheets. 8, recap signature versus addresses count. 9, proof of no name or office, check addresses 208, check signatures 10, 17 pages. 10, proof of no office of candidate listed, check addresses. So you may say, why are you reading this? Because this is very important. And to educate ourselves is really important. So if you educate yourself, you kind of empower yourself. Right? 11, proof of F. Collins' no complete name. Now, if you ever seen the petitions, you know there are certain things that need to be filled in properly. This is required by the Chicago Board of Elections. So how do the Chicago Board of Election ignore their own rules? That is the question we need answers to. 12, proof of no circulator, no notary, check at bottom, and no explanation in column E. Check address is 1633, check signatures 141, 354 pages. 13, proof of no explanation in column E. Check address is 1023, check signatures 208 pages. 14, proof of validated signatures with affidavits. Repeat that again. There was proof of validated signatures with affidavits. So the required count is 12,500. Mr. Collins had 13,800. So if you have affidavits, which is pretty much a legal document, that means that those individuals that signed those affidavits certified and validated they themselves are that individual and they resided at that address. That information was ignored by the Board of Elections. And 15, correspondence of my Jenkins attorney admitting Mayor Candidate was denied everything through emails with hearing officers and other attorneys. There are too many hands in the pot, and the pot is not cooking good food, and we got a problem with that. I'm sitting here with Mr. Collins, and Mr. Collins, once you finish this process, how did you feel about everything that took place?
As though it was 1949 and Jim Crow laws were still in existence.
Mhm. And why would you say that?
Because the same laws that were applied back then to keep African Americans from being involved in the process
Mhm.
are still here today. They're just disguised another way. Why should one have to go through any process when it is a constitutional right
Mhm.
to avail yourself from the political process? To me, it is no more than a scam.
Mhm.
And Jim Crow laws at its best. When you go down to the Board of Elections, you can sign up to become a candidate because it's your constitutional right.
Mhm.
The only three things that are standard is number one, you be born an American citizen.
Mhm.
Number two, you be 18 years or older. And number three, you be a registered voter. That's all that's really required.
Mhm.
And that's all the Constitution asks for.
Mhm.
When you put it in, and then you have to wear a red t-shirt, purple drawers, and then understand how many jelly beans there is in a jar. Those are things that are not constitutional. When we take a look at challenging one's signatures, and it can be one person who they get a title of objector,
Mhm.
one person against all the people who nominate you to run for office has a say so of whether or not you could be on the ballot, that's unconstitutional.
Mhm.
Because we understand under the 14th and the 15th Amendment that equal protection must be applied under the law. And it's not equal when one person has to say so over thousands.
Mhm. So in the entertainment world, when artists, new artists, artists that's already been in the business, going for awards, they use nominations, right?
That's right. So vote.
It's a vote. And the more nominations that they get, they win the award. Am I correct? So if the petitions are labeled as nomination, how do they become exclusion if they're actually nominating somebody to run for an office?
Well, the democratic process says majority rules.
Mhm.
It's been that way since the beginning of the United States. And the Constitution says majority rules.
Mhm.
So when a candidate walks in, with 10,000 signatures, 50,000 signatures, 100,000 signatures, and one person can come off the street and say, "Well, I object to all those votes."
Mhm.
That's what nominations are.
Mhm.
Vote.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden, you're automatically taken off the ballot. You're automatically challenged to your signatures. That is unconstitutional. That is a scam.
Mhm.
That is exactly what it is. And it's been used over and over repeatedly to keep the political party machines in power. It amazes me that in 45 years, no incumbent has ever been kicked off the ballot. Isn't that something?
That is something.
In 45 years, no incumbent.
Mhm.
Even when they've had 10 or 7 challenges, all of a sudden, all of the challengers are kicked off the ballot, but not the incumbent. Because we're living under a system that is biased and it's about entitlement to the political machine. And so when you hear that phrase, political machine, we have to understand we're talking about the Democratic Party. We're talking about the Republicans, the party,
Mhm.
being able to take over elections and keep their people in power
Mhm.
that represent them and not the people themselves.
Yeah, for me, just being in the midst of what was going on, it's all about control.
That's it, power and control.
And it's very sad that you take your position that people uh have voted for and got in the seat, and you took an oath of office to represent the people in totality. But you get in those seats, and when another election comes up, you use that same power to exclude somebody from having the chance to make a difference. As a citizen who lives in the city of Chicago, as a citizen who's seen the crime, and as a police officer who works in that field, and you see it every day. So clearly it was something that you was passionate about, but it upset me because there were those who sit in authority use their power for pay to manipulate the process. And in actuality, you're deceiving the registered voters and thinking that your office and your seat is honest and you're actually representing the people when you're actually representing yourself.
Right.
This has nothing to do with the people. When you stoop that low, it's like being a underhanded bull.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And for me, and I'm speaking for me, and I'm sure I can speak for others too, the fear of somebody who has no political ties, who has nothing to hide, who truly lives in the depth of the city, and I mean in the depth of the city, wanted to make a difference. And because Mr. Collins was intellectual in his speaking and very knowledgeable about a lot of things, conversation came into play and fear kicked in and scare took place. And so a plan was set into place to change the narrative, which is not your place to do. You took away the freedom of choice for voters to make a conscious decision of who they wanted to elect.
That's it. And that's really what it does. When you have rules like this that deprive one of their own constitutional rights, uh, then there can be no justice.
Hmm.
There can be no fairness. And where there's no justice and no fairness, there can be no society that's being governed truly by laws. We heard Martin Luther King say, as we come upon his birthday, an unjust law is no law at all. And it really baffles one to say why in other states, all you have to do if you want to run for office is put your name out there on a piece of paper, fill out the correct forms, and then you run for office. If somebody objects to you being in that office, they have to show up on election day and vote against you and convince other people to vote against you. That's the way the Constitution meant for it to be. The Constitution is to put people in power, not the government in power. That's the difference in this country, is that the people are supposed to have the say so in their government and how it is run and what it does.
But they don't do that.
No.
That's not what, and people may think, oh, this is something new. Let me give you a 411. This is nothing new. It's been happening all the time. But when you're standing window shopping, you don't understand the process it takes to dress the mannequin in the window. It's only when you have to go behind the window on the inside, and then you see what it takes to set the window in perfect place. So standing on the outside looking in, what you wear a outfit and stuff. But when you got to the side of the street, it became clear. It became very clear and transparent that trickery, railroading is not nothing new. This has been happening for decades, decades. And a lot of individuals is still holding office because they've used their position and power to manipulate the process, which is again goes back to denial of voters their freedom of choice and their constitutional right.
That's right.
So, how long will we endure what we deal with in this machine aspect? Because it's unfair. There needs to be a change that needs to
Oh
happen.
yeah. Oh yeah, because politics really is, in its own definition, uh, a power play for land, resources, and picking which get it and which don't.
Mhm.
That's really politics. And so we have to be involved in the political process to make sure that there's fairness and that everyone gets a chance to be involved in those resources that are needed to keep society going. To make sure the laws are made that no one's above, that we all have to abide by. But also, more importantly, to provide a hope in the future for future generations so that all our generations, regardless of race, creed, or color, have a chance to take advantage of. That's why when we take a look at the south and west sides of Chicago, we still see the same disparity that we saw 60 years ago. And it's getting worse, it's not getting better. One then has to question, where does the political process play a role in these things? And that's why the political machines take the resource and choose who they want to be in those spots so that those areas don't get the resources that they need. Because when you take a look at it, we have 50 aldermen, and the majority of those 50 aldermen are African American or Latino.
Mhm.
But yet those are the areas that are deprived the most. So one has to ask, how could that be? You certainly would not go to any Caucasian area where the majority is Caucasian in government and see a disparity such as the one we see in the African American and Latino community. And that's just a fact. And so that means there's a power grab there, a power play behind the scenes. Uh, we've got to do what we can, and we can do it, and come together to change it. And that means demanding that the constitutional right of anyone who is under the Constitution, born an American citizen,
Mhm.
a registered voter, tax-paying citizen, have the right to run for office without any restrictions
Mhm.
other than what the Constitution talks about. Constitution doesn't say you have the right to vote, which was an amendment in the Voting Rights Act. It doesn't say you have the right to vote because you wear a green or a yellow shirt. It says you have a constitutional right to vote. And then any restrictions that would restrict that, they're unconstitutional.
Mhm.
There's not equal protection under the law. Constitution also talks about not creating a separate class. We know that Brown versus the Board of Education, it was always argued before that case was won that as long as you kept races separate but made them equal in resources, it was constitutional. But it's not, because to be separate, number one, is not equal. Equal means under one umbrella, everybody receives the same resources, the same land, the same rules, same laws which to govern themselves. So when you say something has to be separate, that's unconstitutional.
Mhm.
And so that's what we talk about it, because many Chicagoans don't know. They're down at the Board of Elections when they say you don't have enough valid signatures, but you had enough when you went there.
Mhm.
What happened to those other signatures?
Right.
And who deemed those signatures not to be invalid? You have an employee who is a human being like me and you,
Mhm.
and most of the time they're just hired during the election time.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as expert handwriting expert.
Mhm.
Your handwriting changes as everything else in your thing when you get older. Your eyesight changes, the way you walk changes, the way you talk changes. Most of those signatures on their webs, on their in their system, some of them are 40, 50 years old. And they don't keep them updated. The system is never updated. There is no particular group of people assigned to keep it updated.
Mhm.
Uh, Matter of fact, it was said that I was no longer a registered voter on that. Yeah, I was running for the mayor of the city of Chicago and had voted in every election since 1988. What we took a look at is when you go down there, there's no true civilian oversight.
Mhm.
So a hearing officer can say what they want to say, do what they want to do,
Mhm.
and there is no checks and balances within the Board of Elections. There truly is not. The fact that a person can come in off the street, not have any proof, not present any proof, as a matter of fact, don't even come down there, but show up with themselves and an attorney and say, I think that your signatures are counterfeit or they're not valid within itself without any proof is unconstitutional. In our case, we had a convicted felon, and that convicted felon was also in housing court. He didn't have any money to pay his rent for 2 years, but he had money to hire 2 private attorneys to object to my petitions. Well, we know he had to get that money from somewhere.
Somebody had to back him.
And I bet you if we were able to do a deep investigation and go through his text messages and his bank account and to pull his W-2s for the last 2 years and find out, where you get this money from, I bet you we find corruption all over the place. You have now currently 12 aldermen under indictment. One who served as the longest alderman in the history of the city of Chicago, Alderman Burke. So when we talk about government, we know that there's corruption in it. We cannot be ignorant to the fact that corruption does play a huge part in our government. And that's why we have to get rid of these restrictions so that we get fresh blood in, stop this, because we understand when these politicians are left too long in office, greed creeps in.
Yeah, no,
Corruption
walks in.
Yeah,
It walks in.
corruption comes into play. And anytime they're allowed to do 30 and 40 years, they believe they're kings. So you don't have
But
kings.
here is my thing. You arrest people for selling loose cigarettes. Am I correct?
That's it.
If I steal a gallon of milk, I get arrested.
That's right.
If I carjack somebody, you get arrested.
Right.
But those who wear suits and ties, dresses, perform criminal activities every day. And every day they go back to their seat to perform another criminal activity again. Because when you tamper with a system that has been set in place with rules and regulation, that is tampering with evidence. Right? When you lie and say that somebody, preferably you, did not have enough signatures without listening to the facts or hearing or seeing the evidence to prove that you did in fact have enough signatures, somebody was perjuring. That's it. Right? When you say that you did not follow proper protocol, proper procedures, you didn't do everything in your power to follow the process procedures to run for mayor, that's defamation of character.
Exactly.
All right. So those are criminal activities, right? So then for me, my question is, but I've said some things on my videos and I stick to it. I won't say it here, but I still stick to it. Those individuals need to go on criminal charges as well. Because you railroaded on purpose, intentionally, somebody who was truthfully and honest, followed all your process and procedures to the T to run for a candidate as mayor of Chicago. Now, for you all who don't understand, if you see this folder, this is evidence. I want you to see this. This is all evidence. And I'm not telling you something that I heard. I'm not telling you something that I wonder. I'm telling you something that I sat in the middle of and saw for myself. The first day for the first hearing, we saw Rodney Stewart and attorney Fine bumping heads together. Now that's already a conflict of interest before the hearing even started. No judge in any court system talks to the criminal who's going before them in their court before the court kills a case right there. And immediately the other attorney who represents the other party will immediately ask that the judge be removed from the case because it is in a conflict of interest. So how can you have a hearing officer that's sidebarred before the hearing starts? How can you have a hearing officer who sits there and first of all, he did not even explain the rules and the regulations before the hearing started, the do's and the don'ts. He went right in and swapped roles with the attorney who was the objector's attorney, and he then became the objector himself again.
Well, that's exactly right. One of the reasons why we paid for the court reporter's report, because everything that's said on record stays on record. And we pulled the records, and automatically he was advocating for the objector. The objector wasn't even there. The objector attorney was there. Now let's keep in mind, the objector himself was in housing court. He hadn't paid his own mortgage or rent in 2 years. He had no money, so to say. But he had money to hire two on that day, private attorneys, to object to a political process. There's motive there somewhere.
There is.
There's motive there somewhere. And it doesn't take Stevie Wonder to see that.
Exactly.
But it was that clear. You also have to take a look at the fact of the due process. If you take a look at the Board of Election rules, before an objector's petition can be granted, he must show evidence that he did a good faith effort. This objector never showed anything. He just, through his attorney, asked that my signatures go into what's called a record scan. I mean, a records exam, but it's really a record scan. Because all it is another person looking at the screen going, okay, that signature don't look the same. Oh, that signature don't look the same. That's not an exam.
But to your point, when I sign my name to anything, I can sign it twice, and every time it'll be signed differently.
That's right.
It's never gonna be signed the same way. And I'm gonna tell you why I make sure I don't sign it the same way. So many people out here scamming folks.
There you go. People copy it.
They copy your signature and they
Right.
use it for selfish gain. And as you said to your point earlier, when people get older, they got the shakes,
Right.
they can't see,
Or they scribble it.
and they scribbling, or they got arthritis really bad in their hands. So then the question becomes, how did the Board of Election become experts in verifying signatures? The FBI can't verify signatures all the time either.
There are no such thing as handwriting experts. Okay. Because over time things change. But not only that, even over time, but if I'm gonna run, I'm gonna scribble my name. If I got a bag of groceries and you walk up to me and ask me if I'll sign your petition, and you let me sign the petition, I may do it quickly, or I may do it big and round. It doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't.
What it is a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Because on election day, the people should have the right, and only the voters should have the right to choose whether a candidate gets office or not.
Mm-hmm.
When you involve an objector, you are denying citizens of this country
Yes.
the right to pick whom they choose to represent them in government. And one person should not have that type of power. You might as well live in Russia.
Exactly. Now, to your point to that, we know that in the hearing, it was supposed to be for the transcript, which is documented, signatures on.
Right.
But the record exams end up being addresses.
Right.
So they use addresses to sustain a lot of the addresses. But here is the thing. People move all the time. And when you sign documentation, people are not that trusting, right? I'll use somebody else's address. It'll be me. But I definitely would use somebody's address. And on any application that you apply for a job, a credit card, on the bottom it says the statement that I have provided is subject to be true to the best of my ability. And that's what it said on the bottom of most of the things you fill out. It's to the best of your ability. Meaning there is opportunity that things may change from day one to day two. Now, on the day that somebody signed a petition, could have been moving the next day. Nobody knows that. And you're not going to these addresses, each household, to verify that that person is living there. And that's the only way. And I mean the only way that you all should be allowed to sustain anything. If you're actually going to individual's address, ring that doorbell and say, are you Sam Johnson? Are you Mary Maxfield? Are you Kathy or whoever you may be. Only you can verify that what somebody is actually saying to be true.
Well, our forefathers, when they wrote the Constitution, used a lot of common sense. And I'll give you a great example. We had a gentleman who was working on the campaign. He lived on Washington Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
But as you start to go further east, Washington Boulevard turns into Washington Street
Mm-hmm.
as you get further east downtown. When they looked up his address, they found his signature. Look this. They found his name.
Mm-hmm.
But the computer, when it looks at address not found, because all he did was put in Washington and then the number of the street.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't put Washington Street, he didn't put Washington Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
The computer's not set up with intelligence to try to figure out which one.
Right.
So that one was sustained.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in system. He had the right street.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't put an ST behind it or a BLD.
Right.
But this is one of the mistakes of that system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an intelligent system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an updated system.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody, and if you ask anybody, like we did down at the Board of Elections, how often is this so-called records exam system updated?
Mm-hmm.
So we asked them, is it every year? Is it every 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Is it every 7 years? They couldn't say because they don't have anybody assigned.
So how do they make it valid that what they're saying is actually being true?
That's just it. They can't. This is simply another way of keeping a group of people from being involved in the political process.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this really comes down to.
Yeah, signatures only. How can addresses be counted? Which again, it goes back to manipulation. As for me, sitting in the middle of that, the plot and the plan. That's why I titled this "The When, the Why, the Where, and the How," because there was a plan set in place from the beginning. They picked the hearing officer. They picked the attorney. They have somebody. We're gonna call a thing a thing. Now I'm gonna call it. Mr. Collins ain't saying nothing. This coming out of my mouth. Okay, so I want y'all to understand. He's not saying this, but I'm saying this. The Lord was on it too. We're gonna call a thing a thing because far too long we've been covering up. We've been sugarcoating and we've been keeping stuff in the corner in the closet, and now I'm gonna clean y'all closet. The Board of Elections was on this because let me tell you, there is no two people who agree on the same thing, not when evidence is being presented. But here is the clicker. No evidence was ever introduced. Not at the beginning, not at the middle, and not at the end. Not in the Rule 20 hearing, which is the place when the hearing officer presents his final recommendation. Rule 20 hearing, correct?
Right.
Is where they are allowed. Mr. Collins was supposed to be afforded the opportunity to present his evidence, to bring his affidavits, to bring these documentations from the Board of Elections that show you that the top of the paper was not filled out properly. The bottom of it, which is called the appendix, and the was not filled out properly. E was not filled out properly. This evidence was not introduced. And I'm gonna tell you another thing that gave me a heads up that I know the Board of Election was already in on it before they even provided the paperwork when they made their final decision. When a person steps off the platform and tell Channel 5 News in their ear and they haven't announced their final recommendation, and that news media pack up and go, you had already made that decision before y'all walked in that door. That is sabotage. That's sabotage at its finest. You understand what I'm saying? Now, y'all can sugarcoat it, you can dress, you can flip it, you can cover with some icing, you can put some sprinkles on it. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you do it. That is intentional sabotage. Intentional. And for me, it's an embarrassment. And it pissed me off. That's what it did. It pissed me off to know that individuals would stoop that low and be that low down and dirty to do something to an innocent person. That's blindsiding somebody. And then in an email, the attorney act like he was puzzled and he didn't know what's going on. But all the time you knew what was going on. You knew. This is the 15 days of evidence. You knew this. You knew it. It was all planned. Time ran out. There is a such thing as the 24, right?
Right.
The 24 for the defense attorney to put their appearance and their motion in, right?
Right.
The 24 for your attorney to put his appearance and the motion in, right?
Right.
And the 24 for the hearing officer to do what he needs to do.
Right.
The first time the email was sent, the hearing officer, Rodney Stewart, said you didn't get no email. But after that, when the things got into the wheels and the motion started going, all of a sudden he was getting emails everywhere with that. Now, at first you say you didn't get no email. Then all of a sudden you sending emails. Now the deadline is at 5 p.m. for everybody in 24, 24, 24. Correct? 5 o'clock. But Rodney Stewart sent his stuff at 7 p.m. So how do you bypass the 5 o'clock? And everybody else supposed to meet the 5 o'clock deadline.
Well, that's one of the reasons why our judges have to be held to a higher degree of respectability and integrity, because when we have judges that don't abide by the law itself, then there is no law. You become simply do as I say, not as I do.
Mm.
And what was really amazing about this was we kept paying for it and getting the court reporter's report, which showed that our hearing officer was saying one thing but doing something else totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And he was advocating every chance he got for the objector.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if he wants to challenge it, well, we won't have you go to court and challenge it because we have your own record.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said was recorded on that record.
Mm-hmm.
But to show you just how deep and corrupted he is down there at the Board of Elections, this goes even higher.
Mm.
Because when we did get to our final Rule 20 hearing, which we requested, and we had to wait to hear back from the hearing officer, which took a whole week almost, which is unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
He first said this was his directive, it wasn't his main recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the records to show it. Anybody who wants to call us on it, we'd be more than happy to talk to you. We don't care if you're the feds or if you just Joe Blow down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Because here is corruption at its best. I don't know how many people remember back in the day, we had Operation Civil Show. We had Operation Greylord, where 127 Cook County judges went to federal penitentiary. We rely upon our judges to be fair and equal and abide by the Constitution, because it makes us a greater nation and a nation that can survive because we have laws. And a nation without laws and boundaries cannot survive. They just can't. It was one of the reasons why I was running for mayor of the city of Chicago, is because a city that does not have law and order has chaos and will destroy itself. We'll go the way that Detroit did, and they're still trying to work their way back. But when Rodney Stewart, the hearing officer, denied us a due process, and then later on admitted that he denied us a due process, and he did, because the objector's attorneys asked him, said, hey, you did deny him of due process. You did deny him a good faith hearing. You did deny him. You did deny him. You said that your work can be not. This is from the objector's attorney, who said everything that Rodney Stewart said and agreed with us that we were being denied. But yet, to no avail, just goes to show you how deep the corruption is. And keep in mind, in Illinois, we've had more governors go to the state penitentiary than any other state.
You're right.
Governors. We have the Speaker of the House, who served more than 40 years, okay, who is now headed to the penitentiary. We've had more elected officials than most states. The corruption when it comes to the political process in this state and in this city is at an all-time high and must be cleaned out. That is why we have to get rid of this system that does not allow checks and balances by the people themselves. We have to get rid of that challenging of signatures. Let's get rid of petitions. If one wants to run, it's their constitutional right as a born American citizen
Mhm.
of age and a registered voter should have the right to simply sign a piece of paper and run for office. The standard is on election day, if you don't think that person should be in that office, vote against them.
Mhm.
Okay. And like I said, we have to really take a look at the process down there at the Board of Elections
Mhm.
and really question this system that is Jim Crow 2.0. That's all it is, Jim Crow 2.0. The majority of those knocked off the ballot are African Americans and Latinos.
And that's discrimination.
It is discrimination.
It's discrimination at its finest. And it's somebody was upset about what happened with you being railroaded and sabotaged. And I said, you still have to be persistent in presenting the information. You have to let the people know. The insurrection at the Capitol happened on January 6th, right?
Right.
They tried to cover it up. Congressmen and senators were involved. Even the president at the time was involved in the insurrection at the Capitol. But they tried to hush it. They tried to sweep it under the rug. But people kept being persistent, addressing what happened at the insurrection of the Capitol. And eventually they could do nothing but address it.
They had
Right?
to.
They had to.
Yeah.
So we as registered voters have to be persistent. And I'm telling you, if anybody know me, I am very persistent in addressing an issue. And I won't let it rest until we see some changes. Because you know why it's important? Our children are going to be affected. Our children's children are going to be affected. Our senior citizens are already being affected. Homeowners are being affected right now. People are fearful of walking out their front door, not at night anymore, in the daytime. And we're not talking about 12 noon, we're talking about 9 a.m. in the morning. But yet and still, we have a sitting mayor right now, who has done nothing about the crime. And we have, there's nothing to do with Mr. This is Renee speaking. So he ain't got nothing to do with this. This is me. We have individuals that's running for office right now. They have seats. If their asses didn't do nothing in the 60 they sitting there now, that's the damn Chicago. You got your state, Cam Buckler's your state representative. If he ain't representing you as a state representative, how he gonna represent you as a mayor? You have Brandon Johnson as a commissioner. Ain't did nothing on Austin at all. So how is he gonna do something for you as a mayor? We got Sophia King as an alderman, Roderick Sawyer as an alderman. And say aldermen, just courts down your block. You ain't gotta go around 20 down your block. Many abandoned buildings, count how many potholes, count how many broken street lights is on your block. Count how many abandoned garages that need to be fixed in your alleys. Count how bad your alleys look. And you come back and tell me that they're representing you now as an alderman. Then you got Willie Wilson. He's not off the table either. $25 for grocery and $25 for gas don't mean nothing. You can't fill up one shelf on your cabinet with $25 worth of grocery. You can't get down 3 blocks with $25 worth of gas. Hell, my car is a small car. It cost me almost $40 to fill my car. So what $25 gonna do for me? Nothing. It ain't gonna do nothing for you. And for me, that's buying your vote. That's what it is. It's underhandedly buying your vote. And for all the money that he spent, $1 million in gas, $1 million in groceries, you could have took some abandoned buildings, some schools, and took the homeless off the street and put them in, fix them buildings and put them in there. Now, let me piggy. They dropped a busload of immigrants off in Vice President Kamala Harris' house. They put it on Instagram. Now I'm a social media buff. I'll be on that. And somebody said they should do something. No, let me tell you, y'all may say this cruel, but it's not cruel. When you leave veterans who serve their country, when you leave mothers and children with no home and they live up under the viaduct and have a place that they call Tent City, And you can take care of immigrants before you clean up home and the land that you have people that was born and raised here. I got a problem with that. I got a real problem with that. So for me, Mayor Lightfoot don't need to get back in office. And then they got to do Frederick Collins. It got something to do with me. Let me make that clear, crystal clear. This is me talking. Who vote for anybody who will take care outside the wall before they take care inside the wall. There are people that still struggling and suffering from the pandemic that has not risen financially yet. They're still in financial strains. They're still at the point of losing their houses and being evicted from their apartments. And we sitting around here listening to these individuals flap their lips and run their resume like they give a good damn about y'all and they get in office as the mayor of Chicago and they don't care nothing about you because if they did, the work would have started a long time ago, not when the office of mayor came up to be. You understand when I say? That's from the heart. And y'all need to pay attention to it. So for all of y'all thinking Willie Wilson's got your best interest at heart, your Brandon Johnson got your best interest. Brandon Johnson worked for Tony Preckwinkle. Tony Preckwinkle is the Cook County Board President. She's over Cook County Jail. Brandon Johnson and the other commissioners have the procurement process for Cook County Jail. And they get served slop every day. Every day they're served slop as food. And they weren't going there and eat it themselves. And then the bulk of the people that's in there is 90% black and brown. Wake up, people. Wake up. This needs to stop. Enough is enough. And then you talk about your Cook County Board President, she raised your property tax, your garbage tax, your bag tax, your solar tax, tax on top of that tax, and bag tax on recycled bags that's already been recycled. How you gonna do that? Well, yet and still, they got these pushy salaries. Their bank account ain't stretched not one bit. They don't have to worry about overdraft fees. They don't have to worry about the kids getting hungry. The mama gonna go home so she can feed the kid. They don't have to worry about I got to walk to work so I can make because I can't afford a car and pay rent. They don't have to worry about either I'm gonna pick and choose where I'm gonna buy medicine for my kids or I'm gonna buy some groceries. Which one is gonna be? Now they got all these forms going on right now. Your Paul Balance, I left out Paul Balance. Look him up. Look him up. He didn't do your Chicago public school no justice. Y'all need to pay attention. Now I don't discriminate. I don't get damn if you're red, yellow, purple, pink, blue. I don't care. Really don't care. But it's time out. Enough is enough. And I done had enough. I had enough of the lies. I had enough of the trickery. And when they sabotage and railroaded you, that really pissed me off. I'm just saying. It pissed me off. Because we as a race of people are the only ones who hold each other's ankles. We pull the rug and we move the ladder. You won't go after the white folks, not at all, but you will go after each other.
Well, I think one of the things that has moved me over the last 30, almost 35 years to be involved in public service is that I do regard this as one of the greatest nations on earth and that we do have a constitution.
Mhm.
The problem is everybody don't adhere to the
Mhm.
constitution. That's the major problem. And when you take a look at documents around the world and countries that have documents, the Constitution is the only one that guarantees individual rights, which means regardless of whether I was born rich, poor, black, white, uh, space alien, or whatever, in the Constitution, I must be treated as equal.
Mhm.
Now, everybody doesn't adhere to that because we know for 400 some years, this country itself didn't adhere to it.
Exactly.
But that Constitution is the conscience of this country.
Mhm.
That's why eventually it had to be changed. When you take a look at uh, politics and why it's so important to be involved in the process, a large number of families that can barely afford medicine and groceries, to then put a 10% tax on a shopping bag,
Mhm.
now they have to pay for a plastic bag
Mhm.
on top of everything else and factor that in to carry those same groceries that they can barely afford. Eggs are at an all-time high.
$3.
Oh yeah, eggs have gone up so much. They've started decorating them in gold.
Mm.
That's just ridiculous. There's no more 5 pound bag of sugar, 4 point something. And yet it costs 3 times more than what it used to cost.
It does.
When I went to Walgreens the other day, standing in line behind somebody, and the person was buying, they needed to buy medicine. They have cancer. And I can't pronounce the name of the drug that they needed. I asked the pill that they needed. Well, one pill was $280, and that was with their insurance. Now, tack onto that, you're going to also charge them for a bag. What is it? And that's why I say we take a look at those right office, whether it's Tony Preckwinkle or whether it's others that are in office, Brandon Johnson and so forth. You're charging people that can barely afford to make it. And you're just charging them more and more and giving them less and less. And that has got to be stopped. That's why we need term limits. Because we get these people to get in office, they stay in office, and they're out of touch with the public as to what the public needs anymore. And now you also have what's called a sugar tax. We know that African Americans and other minorities get a great deal on things that have sugar in it. Who is that tax really affecting the most? People who don't have the means. And when I talk to people, they say, well, uh, they have to do more. They have to pull themselves up by their bootstrap. But you're talking about a race of people that came here and they didn't pull us off the boat with any boots on. So how can you pull your bootstraps up when you got off the boat and you were barefoot with chains on?
My God.
If I'd pull myself up with chains holding me down. We've got to do more to make sure that government is respective of what everyone needs.
That's right.
And to make sure the resources and fairness is given out. And so that's one of the reasons why I continue to be a community organizer. I continue to avail myself to the American process, to make sure that evenly we are treated fairly under the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm not going to stop. And actually, I have 15 days of evidence. And as long as this election is running, I will provide 15 days of evidence to go along with it. So you're going to have to get used to me because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not. I'm going to be very persistent in this because change is what we need. And education of what is going on in our system. We need to understand. We just can't go along buying Michael Jordan gym shoes, paying $700 for weed, and going on our merry way and think life is going to be hunky dory. And then wait till something hits you at your front door. Then now you want to be concerned. You need to be concerned now. You need to teach kids now. You need to educate them now and let them know their do's and their don'ts. The Safety Act, you need to be looking all into that too, because it's going to affect you greatly, whether you think so or not. It may not affect you now, but down the line, it's going to hit you. And then you're going to round back around and you're going to try find everybody and their mama to try to give you some information. Why you got to wait till you get in trouble to find it? Do it now. Don't wait till later. Do it now. So this has been very informative. Let me ask you one question though, because I'm understanding there are those who've been going to the forums, but I'm sure that somebody is going to wait for you to come out and endorse this. What is your thoughts?
Well, we have had at least 4 candidates ask for my endorsement. I want to let the people make their decision. And I want to take time to find out exactly what everyone's plan is. To me, an endorsement is an approval of what you expect. And I think it's only fair to let the rest of the voters see what they want and me to evaluate which one of those candidates will do the most for my community.
Yeah, but here is my problem because I'm a very nosy individual, and I've been checking out everybody's website. I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter. Paul Vallis has been tweeting a lot, and all of a sudden he has what you call a public safety plan. And at first, he didn't have a public safety plan. But I know because I've been on your website, and I'm very familiar with website. So a lot of the stuff that he's saying is actually mimicking your website just in reverse. He just dressed it up.
Where you at?
So
You know that to be true.
now with plans, the Sunday they didn't have plans at first. So that's my first alert when I see if you don't have it coming out the gate, how can you have it now? So now that you're out of the picture and they feel like your platform is a pretty good platform, which it was. And the saving of property taxes, that was a little tweak, and public safety, that was a little tweak as well. So I to all of that. I really did.
You know, see, I remember that one kid. See what I talked about. I ran from there. The freezing of property taxes for 15 years. They ain't gonna say that,
Nope.
but I was the only kid that said I was freezing for 15 years. If you freeze property taxes to lower by 50%, you could grow the economy. Economy would grow more than by 200 to 300%. So people would have money that they could invest, money that they could save, money to put towards their kids' education,
Mhm.
fixing up their home, going after another degree, uh, different things they can use their money for, and they would put it right back into the economy. But you won't hear any other candidate talk about
No, you
this.
won't hear them talk about whole lots of not even the homeless off the street. That's the last thing on that list. Well, I thank you, Mr. Collins, for taking the time to sit down with me and having this wonderful conversation as usual. We started out together at the beginning and we finishing up at the end. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Reality Is where words do come to life. Keep tuning in. Check out the YouTube channel, check out Twitter, because more things are coming. All right. Until we talk again.